9 Primarchs betrayed the Emperor in the Horus Heresy, and 10,000 years later, every single one of them is something that is no longer what it was. Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters, is a Daemon Prince of Khorne, a thing of pure rage with the butcher's nails still wired into whatever remains of his skull, his mind shattered so completely after his ascension that his flagship, the Conqueror, began to mutate just from his presence aboard it. Mortarion is a rotting Daemon Prince of Nurgle, ruling his plague planet as the thing he spent his entire mortal life trying not to become, the Lord of Disease, the servant of the force he most despised. Magnus the Red is a Daemon Primarch of Tzeentch on the planet of the Sorcerers, vast and scarlet and burning, bound to the Changer of Ways designs. Fulgrim is a 4-armed serpentine Daemon Prince of Slaanesh, a creature of perfect corruption, whose soul was once displaced into a painting while a greater demon puppeted his body. Lorgar Aurelian ascended to daemonhood during the heresy itself, before the Siege of Terra, and now sits in unending meditation on his demon world of Sicarus, a confirmed Daemon Primarch who has barely spoken in 10,000 years. Horus is dead, his soul obliterated by the Emperor aboard the Vengeful Spirit, his corpse later destroyed by Abaddon. Conrad Kurz is dead by his own design. The Night Haunter let the Calidus assassin Meshen come for him, let the blade fall, chose his end as validation of everything he believed. And Alpharius is reportedly dead, Rogel Dorn said to have killed him at the Battle of Pluto, though, given that the Alpha Legion operates on identical twins, body doubles, and deliberate unknowability as a founding philosophy, the final fate of Alpharius and his twin Omegon remains genuinely uncertain. That is 8. 8 paths to being unmade, devoured, claimed, or destroyed. Then there is Perturabo, the Lord of Iron, Primarch of the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors, the most coldly brilliant and most resentful engineer the Emperor ever made. He walked into the Eye of Terror with the rest of the traitor Primarchs, and 10,000 years later, GW's own Arcs of Omen material explicitly calls him a Daemon Primarch. The lexicanum is unambiguous. He did ascend. But look at what every other chaos-aligned traitor Primarch traded for that power. Angron became an instrument of Khorne's rage. Mortarion became a vessel of Nurgle's rot. Magnus serves Tzeentch's designs. Fulgrim is Slaanesh's serpent. Each of the 4 god-aligned Daemon Primarchs was claimed, infused, and remade in the image of a patron, a specific god, one who owns them. Perturabo is a Daemon Prince of Chaos undivided. He has no patron, no master, no god who shaped him in its image. He took the immortality, the demon forges, the 10,000 years of accumulated power, and across every source from the Horus Heresy novels through the modern Eye of Terror, Reign of Iron campaign book, his characterization has never changed. He is still the cold, calculating, engineering-obsessed architect he always was, ruling Medringard by mathematics and grudges rather than by worship. Every other traitor Primarch was claimed by chaos. Perturabo used it. Tonight, the Lord of Iron, the one who refused every god, and why GW won't write a clean answer on what that means. To understand why that distinction carries weight, you need to understand who Perturabo actually was before the Eye got him. He landed on Olympia during the scattering of the Primarchs in the Age of Strife. The planet was a world of warring city-states. He was found climbing the mountains below the city of Lokos by the guards of the tyrant, a man named Damokos, who brought the strange child into his household. The boy had no memory of anything before the mountain. What he had instead was an overwhelming intellect, a mind that seemed to instinctively understand how everything worked, from architecture to political debate to siege engines that the rest of Olympia considered technologically impossible. Damokos used him to win alliances and wars. Perturabo never returned any of it. He shunned his adoptive siblings, refused affection, trusted no one. He was a cold and brooding child who knew he wasn't of this world, and who had no idea why he'd been placed in it. When the emperor arrived, Perturabo immediately submitted and ousted Damokos's power in the same motion. He was given command of the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors, and he opened his relationship with his new sons by reviewing their war record, judging it inadequate, and ordering a decimation. By lottery, 1 in every 10 legionaries was selected to be beaten to death by his comrades. That was how Perturabo introduced himself. It tells you everything about him. The Great Crusade used him accordingly. The 4th Legion became the Imperium's primary siege force. Wall breakers, trench diggers, garrison keepers. Other Primarchs fought glory campaigns. Perturabo oversaw fortifications on worlds that mattered to no one, garrisoning conquered territory while his brothers accumulated honor. A particularly savage campaign in the Soctrata Deeps, purging the Hrud from a region he considered strategically useless on the War Council's orders, devastated his fleet when a Hrud temporal shockwave struck during the final stages. He blamed the emperor's vanity for the damage done to his sons on a campaign that served nothing. His legion was so worn down by endless garrisons and sieges that they simply began to enjoy the killing after the trenches were dug. The Lexicanum's entry captures the psychology in a single line. Long has he lived in the shadow of his more favored Primarch brothers, frustrated by the mundane and ignominious duties that have become the hallmark of his legion. He said it himself, in the line the Lexicanum uses to open his entry. "You don't know the things I dream. No one does. No one ever cared enough to find out." Then came Olympia. While the heresy was beginning elsewhere, Perturabo received news that his homeworld was in rebellion. Damokos was dead, the city-states bickering again. He demanded the Olympians enact their own decimation, kill 1 in 10 of their own, or face extermination. Many refused. He purged Olympia city by city, overrunning the very fortresses he had built during his conquest of the planet's warring states. By the time it was over, 5 million Olympians were dead and the rest enslaved. He killed Calophone, his foster sister, when she confronted him as Lokos fell and blamed him for everything. He stood in silence over the pyres. Horus commended him, presented him with a hammer named Forge Breaker, got his loyalty. But even then, Perturabo was never fully committed to the heresy's cause. Graham McNeil's Slaves to Darkness is explicit about this. The Lord of Iron fought with Horus only until they broke open the imperial palace. After that, he planned to turn on the War Master. The man who joined the biggest civil war in human history was already planning, even at that stage, how to betray the side he'd chosen. The key event for understanding his eventual status is Angel Exterminatus, Graham McNeil's novel from the Horus Heresy series. Fulgrim came to Perturabo with an offer, near unlimited power, the chance to tip the rebellion, a voyage into the Eye of Terror to retrieve a superweapon called the Angel Exterminatus. Perturabo agreed. They entered the Eye and found the crone world of Idris, and in the spherical chamber at the heart of the Amon Meshach Kalis citadel, Fulgrim revealed the truth. There was no superweapon. There was only Fulgrim's own apotheosis. He activated the Mogatar stone, a gift he had already placed on Perturabo, and it drained the Lord of Iron of his power, channeling it into Fulgrim's Slaaneshi ascension ritual. Perturabo was used as a battery by his own brother to fuel another Primarch's daemonhood. He survived. Gathered enough strength to strike Fulgrim with Forgebreaker. The blow shattered Fulgrim's mortal form, but the Prince of Pleasure was already transforming, already becoming the four-armed serpent of Slaanesh. The blow only completed the process. Fulgrim looked at the brother he had used, told him they would meet again, and vanished in a burst of warp energy. Perturabo had watched his brother become a Daemon Prince of Slaanesh, fueled partly by his own stolen power. He allowed the loyalist Astartes who'd been stalking the traitor fleet to withdraw from Idris. Then he ordered his fleet deep into the Eye. He was learning. He didn't turn back because he'd decided he didn't deserve to. Graham McNeill makes this explicit in Angel Exterminatus. Perturabo believed there would be no forgiveness for Olympia, and beyond that there shouldn't be. The destruction of his homeworld was the point of no return, not because the Emperor would necessarily have refused to forgive him, but because Perturabo had already condemned himself. He didn't need anyone else to do it. At the Siege of Terra, the Lexicanum records something telling. Aboard the Vengeful Spirit, with Horus visibly losing himself to chaos, Perturabo studied every fragment of warp lore he could access. He was watching a Primarch disappear into the ruinous powers and filing away every technical detail. When Horus tried to appeal to his pride, told him he was the only Primarch he could still trust, Perturabo continued to observe and calculate. He connected to the Traitor data network, absorbed enormous quantities of data, and directed every facet of the greatest siege in history with his own mind. His subordinate Abaddon observed that in that state, commanding the siege, Perturabo seemed, for the first time, happy. He was denied the final assault on the palace itself, replaced by Mortarion and the Death Guard. He withdrew his forces before Horus died, watching the siege he had designed fall apart. Then he went to the Eye. Before reaching what Perturabo became, the contrast beat needs its time. 8 traitor Primarchs, 8 specific fates, each one a data point about what chaos does to a Primarch who gives it what it wants. Angron came to his daemonhood without choosing it. In Aaron Dembski-Bowden's Betrayer, it's a specific plot point. Lorgar performed the ritual, not Angron. The Butcher's nails, the crude implants hammered into the World Eater's skulls, had been slowly destroying him for centuries. When Lorgar channeled the Ruin Storm's energy and forced the ascension, Angron's mortal body was already eroded past the point of no return. The nails and Khorne's rage merged, and what emerged had its mind completely shattered. His flagship, the Conqueror, began to mutate rapidly just from his presence aboard it. He led the first war for Armageddon in M41 as Khorne's favored champion before being banished by the Grey Knights. He returned in M42 for the Arcs of Omen. He is rage. Nothing else is left. Mortarion's fall was slower and more ironic. He had built his entire identity on fighting psychers and demons, on trusting only iron and poison and will. When the Death Guard's fleet was becalmed in the warp during the journey to Terra, trapped in Nurgle's garden, Mortarion endured as long as he could, and then broke. He accepted Nurgle's gifts to survive, and became the Daemon Primarch of the god he had spent his whole existence trying to destroy, the servant of precisely what he most despised. He rules the Plague Planet now, a rotting tower of diseased majesty. He is exactly what he fought. Magnus accepted Tzeentch's bargain almost immediately, at the fall of Prospero. When Leman Russ and the Space Wolves came for his world at the Emperor's command, Magnus made the deal. Tzeentch transported him and his sons to the planet of the Sorcerers. He retained his intellect, his memories, his strategic personality. In that sense, he is the clearest counter-argument to any claim that chaos automatically destroys a Primarch's mind. But Magnus is wholly Tzeentch's. His schemes, his long game, his choices, all of it flows through the Changer's designs. He is bound, and knowing it doesn't change the binding. Fulgrim's corruption was the most protracted in the heresy record. The Laeran sword concealed a Greater Daemon of Slaanesh. The possession was gradual, then total. His soul was displaced into a painting in the vaults of his flagship, while the demon wore his body. He eventually reclaimed his form, but in doing so discarded the last of his conscience, discarded any capacity for remorse. By the time he ascended on Idris, partly fueled by Perturabo's drained power, he was already something that had surrendered all moral architecture in exchange for perfect sensation. The four-armed serpentine thing that calls itself Fulgrim is Slaanesh's most beloved instrument. Lorgar is the case that demands precision. He is a Daemon Primarch, fully ascended, fully demonic, his status confirmed in official Visions of Heresy artwork and in every codex that covers him. He ascended during the heresy, before the Siege of Terra, earlier than most of his brothers. His post-heresy behavior is total withdrawal. From Sicarus, his demon world in the eye, he watches over his word-bearers in something approaching unending meditation, directing their cultist armies through proxies while engaging in perpetual communion with chaos. He is the most ideologically committed of all the traitor Primarchs. He started the whole heresy, devoted decades to engineering chaos worship as a mass movement, performed the ritual that forced Angron's ascension against his will. He ended up the most absent. The most devout chaos worshipper among the Primarchs produced the least visible demon Primarch. Horus is gone. The Emperor's counterattack in the final moments of the siege wasn't just a killing blow, it was a soul obliteration, specifically intended to prevent the Chaos Gods from resurrecting the War Master. Abaddon later destroyed what remained of the corpse. Horus does not exist in any coherent canonical form. Conrad Kurz died because he chose to. The Night Haunter had spent his whole existence prophesying his own murder as a form of nihilistic validation. The Kalidas Temple operative M'Shen came for him. He let her in. He died. No demon ascension. Just a Primarch who decided his death was the point. Alpharius is, according to Praetorian of Dorne, killed by Rogel Dorn during the Battle of Pluto. It's treated as fact in meta-summaries, but the Alpha Legion was founded on the principle that no information about the Alpha Legion can be trusted. They are twin Primarchs, Alpharius and Omegon, interchangeable by design, and their extensive use of body doubles makes any confirmed death of a named figure genuinely uncertain. Omegon may be dead. Alpharius may never have been the man Dorne killed. The honest answer is that the Alpha Legion's final fate is left unclear in a way that is about unknowability rather than deliberate bargain. 8 traitor Primarchs. Every single one is dead, destroyed, claimed by a specific god, or uncertain in ways that foreclose the question. Not one of them spent 10,000 years in the raw warp on their own terms, serving no master. After the heresy ended and the traitors retreated into the Eye, Perturabo had one more act before his transformation: the Iron Cage. The scouring was still ongoing, the Imperial counteroffensive hunting the surviving traitor legions. The Imperial Fists, 7 Legion of Rogel Dorn, were in the middle of being broken into successor chapters under the Codex Astartes, when Perturabo sprung a trap years in preparation. He lured them into an elaborately fortified killing ground, a fortress complex designed to be irresistible to Dorne's sons while offering no viable exit. The Imperial fists entered. The Iron Warriors closed the walls. By the time Space Wolves arrived to extract the survivors, the casualties were catastrophic. The gene seed of over 400 Imperial fists was sacrificed to the Dark Gods. In exchange, Perturabo was elevated to Daemon Prince of Chaos Undivided. The mechanics of that transaction are worth examining closely. He didn't pledge himself to Khorne in a moment of rage. He didn't surrender to Nurgle after a century of psychological erosion. He didn't accept Tzeentch's bargain with his homeworld burning around him. He took the most sacred biological material of the Legion he most despised, the gene seed of Rogel Dorne's sons, the living genetic legacy of his greatest rival, and used it as a down payment on daemonhood. He paid with something external to himself, something he hated, for power he wanted. No worship, no patron, no god received his devotion. He became a Daemon Prince of Chaos Undivided. That label is the critical distinction. It means no single chaos power holds his allegiance. Tzeentch didn't remake him in its image. Khorne didn't fill him with its rage. Nurgle didn't infuse him with its rot. Slaanesh didn't claim his conscience. He received the power of all four and owed nothing to any. Medringard, the world he rules from in the Eye of Terror, is described precisely in the Lexicanum. It orbits a single black star that emits no light, drawing life and vitality away from the surface instead. Great rivers of molten lava power the infernal machinery of the Iron Warriors, whose industry further pollutes the naturally white sky. Millions of slaves are worked to death. Chaos warships are tethered to towers tall enough to penetrate the atmosphere, serving as docking spires for the fleet above. The fortresses cover the surface, massive walled structures ringed by layered defenses and labyrinthine turret networks, each personally designed by the warsmith commanding it. The Pyrophon Hellforge cluster runs on subterranean foundries, churning out demon engines and demonic materials under the oversight of warpsmiths and the Dark Mechanicum. The Iron Warriors use chaos as raw material for manufacturing, the way a forge uses heat. At the center is the Colassicon, Perturabo's personal fortress, rising from an onyx isle amidst a lake of molten lava. Inside it, massive cogitator networks ceaselessly feed strategic information to his central sanctum, where he pores over endless influx of data and engages in psychic communion with distant agents and demons. He isn't there to worship, he is there to think. Warhammer Community's own copy makes this plain. Perturabo's deadliest weapon is his mind, and he's been engaging it inside the towers of Medringard for thousands of years. Every dispatched warband and recalled fleet has been part of his intricate maneuvers, and now the masterstroke is at hand. In M42, when Vashtor the Archaphane launched the Arcs of Omen campaign, Vashtor being a greater demon unaligned to any chaos god, who holds dominion over the Forge of Souls, and whose goal is to achieve full chaos godhood, Perturabo was his collaborator. The Arcs of Omen, Vashtor publication, uses these words directly. Vashtor and Perturabo, Daemon Primarch of the Iron Warriors Traitor Legion, had collaborated on many nightmarish projects over the millennia. Collaborated, not served, not obeyed. Two calculating entities with overlapping interests. Every source describing their relationship positions it as a partnership of equals. No source in the modern lore shows Perturabo taking orders from Vashtor. The Eye of Terror, Reign of Iron campaign, GW's most current Perturabo material, frames his 10,000 years with the Infinite Citadel, an expanding ring of brutalist fortifications designed by Perturabo himself, entire worlds transformed into fortresses, with their resources exhausted to the last stone, advancing toward the Cadian Gate. This is his strategy. Not bloodshed for a god's pleasure, not plague for Nurgle's satisfaction, not sorcery for Tzeentch's amusement. Siege, fortress, calculation. The same doctrine he was executing for the Emperor 10 millennia ago, now aimed in the opposite direction. Warhammer community called the first official artwork of post-ascension Perturabo, published in that campaign book, the first ever proper depiction of post-ascension Perturabo ever published in a Warhammer book. For context, Angron has a plastic 40K model with a datasheet explicitly titled Daemon Primarch Angron. Mortarion has a plastic model and datasheet. Magnus has a plastic model and datasheet. Perturabo, 10,000 years into the Eye of Terror as a Daemon Primarch, does not have a current 40K model. His only official miniature is the Forge World Horus Heresy Primarch figure, him as he was before everything. GW's first look at what he actually became arrived as a piece of artwork in a lore book. That is a fact worth sitting with on its own terms. What follows is the channel's reading. The canon above is established. This is interpretation. The four god-aligned Daemon Primarchs share a specific quality. Each wasn't just transformed. Each was remade in the image of a patron. Angron is an expression of Khorne. His entire being has become the god's desire made manifest in Primarch-scale flesh and bone. Mortarion embodies Nurgle's philosophy about endurance through suffering, about decay as a form of life. Magnus expresses Tzeentch's obsession with knowledge and manipulation, twisted past any original purpose. Fulgrim embodies Slaanesh's pursuit of perfect sensation, with all moral limits stripped away. Their daemonhood is identity replacement. They are their gods walking in Primarch-shaped forms. Perturabo's daemonhood is different in kind, not just degree. When he paid the gene seed of 400 imperial fists, he paid with something external to himself, the biological material of enemies he despised. He didn't offer his loyalty. He didn't surrender his sense of self to a patron's influence the way Mortarion surrendered to Nurgle's rot, or the way Fulgrim surrendered to Slaanesh's corruption. He identified a price, paid it, and received daemonhood in exchange. The transaction was commercial, not religious. Lorgar, who started the chaos worship that ignited the entire heresy, is now in perpetual meditation on Sicarus, fully ascended, fully demonic, and functionally absent from 10,000 years of galactic history. The most devout chaos worshipper among the Primarchs is the most withdrawn, the most useless as an active force. Chaos had him completely and made him inert. Perturabo, who never worshipped anything, is still actively building, still directing campaigns toward a coherent military objective. The Iron Warriors as a legion reflect this. Where the Thousand Sons were defined by sorcery, the Death Guard by devotion to Nurgle's gifts, the Word-Bearers by genuine religious fervor, the Iron Warriors have always been defined by siegecraft, engineering, pragmatic attrition, and contempt for anything soft enough to require faith. They use demon engines as manufactured weapons, not as divine gifts. Their relationship with chaos is transactional, in the same way their Primarchs is. GW's treatment of Perturabo, and this is the channel's read, not the lore, appears to maintain deliberate ambiguity about the depth of his demonic transformation. He is labeled Daemon Primarch in Arcs of Omen Vashtor. His post-ascension form, when GW finally revealed it, is massive and formidable.
But his personality, his operational focus, his relationship to chaos, nothing has changed across 10,000 years of canonical sources. GW has given him no God-aligned patron. They haven't shown him as a servant of the ruinous powers in the way Mortarion or Angron are shown. They held back his model, held back his full reveal, and when the reveal came, they framed it not as a monster of chaos, but as a military strategist executing a 10,000-year plan. A Perturabo with a patron god is a less interesting story. A Perturabo who has been in the Eye of Terror for 10 millennia and still serves no master is a story GW can't afford to close. The ambiguity does more work open than answered. The question the lore keeps circling: what does it mean that the soul cost was apparently optional? Angron didn't choose his ascension. Lorgar forced it. Mortarion broke under pressure. Magnus accepted because his world was being destroyed. Fulgrim was corrupted gradually, then completely. 4 different mechanisms, but in each case a chaos god was the active party, investing in them, remaking them, claiming them. Perturabo's transaction had no active patron god on the other side. He sacrificed gene seed to the dark gods collectively, to chaos as a formless aggregate rather than to a specific master. He claimed daemonhood like a man purchasing materials from a market he happens to despise. The price was defined. What he owed afterward was left deliberately unspecified. That same vagueness runs through every source describing how he rules, how he plans, how he treated Vashtor as an equal, how he has spent 10,000 years calculating a path to the Cadian Gate. It all reads as the same man who decimated his legion on day 1. Cold, precise, practical, contemptuous of anything that couldn't be quantified. He found a way to take the power chaos offered and pay for it without surrendering what the gods actually wanted, which was an Angron, a being remade in their image, a soul that belonged to them. 9 sons turned on their father, and the warp took its price from all of them. It made Angron a beast of rage with his mind destroyed, every vestige of the Primarchs subsumed by the nails and by Khorne's hunger. It made Mortarion a tower of rot, the servant of everything he despised. It made Magnus a vast thing of fire and sorcery, his intellect intact but his choices no longer his own. It made Fulgrim a serpentine creature of Slaanesh, the man who once valued perfection above everything, now a perfect instrument of excess. It killed Horus completely, soul obliterated, corpse destroyed. It gave Lorgar exactly what he had asked for and left him silent and absent. It took Kurz's death and Alfarius's identity along with it. That is what chaos does to a Primarch who gives it what it wants. Perturabo identified the market rate for daemonhood, paid it in enemy gene seed, and came out the far side of 10,000 years in the Eye of Terror, still the same cold, bitter, engineering-obsessed architect he always was. He is still building fortresses, still running the numbers, still owing nothing to any god. He is a Daemon Prince of Chaos undivided, with a demon forge world, an infinite citadel advancing on the Cadian Gate, and a collaboration with a greater demon who wants to become a god, and GW hasn't given him a patron, a model, or a clean canonical statement about what he truly is. That silence is the answer, because the moment GW confirms exactly what chaos made Perturabo into, the most interesting question in Traitor Primarch lore dies with the confirmation. And the question,
Can a Primarch take everything chaos offers and refuse the one thing it actually wants? The act of being owned is worth more to the story left open. Every traitor Primarch fell to chaos, except the one who was too cold to. Subscribe for more stories like this.